Hello everyone and welcome to another Richard Head Longbows video. I haven't got a cold, I've got a mask on my face because I'm working with some yew. If you didn't see the previous video to that, I'll stick it up on the cards there, you can have a look. These are just my videos where I show you what I'm getting up to in the workshop. Now in the last one I was roughing out this one, and I also had this triple laminate which I hadn't got round to roughing out, which I have pretty much done the roughing out now. I've just got to do a bit of finishing on the back here, the bamboo. But I'm going to work on this yew bow today. I'm going to see if I can get this one up on the tiller today, start the initial tillering and, well, yeah, see how it goes really. This one, as you can probably see here, and some of you noticed, we've got writing on the back here. This just shows us what this bow is destined to be, or what, fingers crossed, what it hopefully will turn out to be, because it's for a customer. So they want around 38 to 40 pounds at 28 inches. And well, we've also put RH on here because it's going to be for a right-handed customer. So I know what side I'm putting on the arrow plate when I get round to that stage, which is basically the only difference really between left and right-handed. So I need to put in the tillering grooves here at the ends. Normally I put in some bracing cord grooves as well, but this is quite a light bow, so I'm just going to put some normal grooves here. So I've got the top limb here at the moment, indicated by the fact that the centre line is nearer the top of the handle here. That's the handle, the extent of the handle from that line to that line. So that shows this is the top limb. So let's put this groove in. That's the basic shape done. The main difference, as I've mentioned in other videos, between the grooves really for the top limb, as you're going to have just a loop here rather than the bottom limb which has the loop with the bowyer's knot in it. So this string will actually come down the limb slightly more, so we've got this shape where the grooves actually come down the bow rather than simply around. So that's the top done there. I'll widen that out with this file a bit. There we go, now let's do the bottom one. Okay, that's that with the rat tail, and now a bit widened out. Again, as I've mentioned before, you don't have to be too fussy about these grooves. These grooves really are just for holding the string in place. They aren't going to be what you use with the final bow. Obviously we're going to be putting nocks on like we got there, so eventually that will have a knock on the end there, and a groove then will go into the knock. So don't worry about too much about these. These are very much temporary and functional for the purposes of tillering. Now I'm going to undo the knot in this because it almost certainly won't be the right length. One of the things I am going to do before I get that string on, if I can find it, oh there we are, I'm going to remark this before I lose all the marks completely. So I've got the bottom and the top of the handle. I'm going to replace that onto the back here, match that up with that one. So we've got that mark all the way around, and the top as well. It's very possible when doing work on the bow that I'm going to lose all these lines. So if I can keep them on the back, which I won't have to touch now that I've done the back of the bow, it means at least I can keep all those marks and I'm not going to lose them. Okay, so let's sort this string out. Now to start with, it's just going to be loose. So that string's just going to go straight onto the top there. And then for the bottom, exactly the same. So I'm just going to tie the bowyer's knot. Put that straight on. There we go. So no tension at all in the string. It's just going to go straight up onto here. Oh, have to move some other stuff out of the way. Oh, there we go. Okay. I'll use a piece there to protect the back and then clamp it on. Have a quick check, see how level it is. Okay, it'll do for now. Okay. Just a few tentative pulls really, just to give me an indicator of quite what's going on. See if anything's actually happening. Usually when you do this just after roughing out, it doesn't move much at all. You won't see much movement. Well, on here, and I hope you can see that on the video if I can get my head in the right place. Sorry, using this head cam isn't always the easiest. Hopefully you can see I'm looking down there, sorry, to look to see where the tiller is going to, the hook. But if you see that top limb, there's actually got a bit of a bend in it, which is okay, there's nothing wrong with the bend. But the bottom limb's not doing very much in comparison, it's quite straight. And so if I look down at the hook there, you can see it wandering over to one side, which is also another indicator. If you aren't at the stage yet where you can really see the difference in limbs, and not everyone can see how limbs are bending, it is one of those things that takes a while to get used to. But the hook, if it wanders over quite considerably, then you can see it's going over to the left. So it's getting a lot more movement in that top limb, which is allowing that hook to come over to this side. So yeah, so that means I can take some off the bottom and try and even that up a bit. There's not a huge difference in the size of the limbs. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. There's a bit of thickness in comparison to in the tips there, but it was generally stiff. So I'm going to take some generally throughout. I'm going to even this handle up a bit. So we got a bit too much of a difference there in the way that the Buchanan dips are, the way it slopes into the handle is a bit different. And it also is a bit too angled. I'm going to make this a slightly shallower dip there. It's a bit of an acute angle at the moment. So I'm going to make that a much more pleasing shape. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check the depth of this handle. I'm going to see if it's correct. Okay. Yeah, so it's a bit too thick there at that end. So we obviously want this. We want this to be shallower than it is wide. Otherwise the bow's going to be bending over to one side. So I need to reduce the height of the handle there a bit, because as you see the calipers are going over there but are getting stuck there. So we've got a bit too much height there. So I'm going to do all that adjusting with the rasp here. So excuse the noise. Okay, so it's a slightly better transition now from the limbs into the handles there either side, and I've evened out the handle a bit there, so those hopefully those depths are a bit better now. We can check that again. Okay, so that's there. Okay, that's fine. So we've now got this depth is shallower than the width here, so that's going to allow the bow to bend correctly. Now you can check that out throughout the limbs, particularly if you're working with a self-view bow. You'll probably need to do that a lot, because obviously the depth's going to vary greatly because you've kept in the sapwood as well. Like you can see here, the sapwood would the overall shape of the bow, the shape of the natural shape of the bow, you would find to be a lot less consistent than the bow that's been cut out and has been laminated, because obviously you're artificially taking it to a desired shape by cutting out and laminating, exactly the same as you're doing with the triple laminate, which obviously also gives you the opportunity to put a setback into the bow, which this one has, the triple laminate, whereas the U-bow here is a much straighter stave. Okay, so let's reduce some of this bottom limb, which was the offending limb, the limb that wasn't bending very much. Again, I'm just going to take some off generally. There wasn't a particular area necessarily that it was stiff, and also because that top limb is doing quite a lot of bending throughout, I don't want to do any more tillering on it, any more drawing of the bow, in case that ends up over bending and becoming permanently bent. So I'm going to generally take some out of this bottom and see what we get. Just going to use the scraper a bit, get rid of some of the marks. Now, to save yourself getting caught out later on, always try and work evenly if you can. Now, what I mean by that is we've established that the bottom limb is stiff and that we need to take some off it, which we've just done, and that the top limb was bending, certainly bending more than this bottom limb. Now, because I've just removed some from here, eventually when we get to near completing the bow, you're going to have to take some off the other limbs anyway, because this has only just been roughed out. So you've still got lots and lots of angle marks, lots of tool marks. This is nowhere near the condition that we want it to be later on down the line. Now, if you compare that to this bottom limb, where I worked it with the spoke shave initially, then the rasp, and now just the scraper, you've actually got a comparatively good finish on it. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually, although this is the limb that's moving and I don't want to necessarily take wood off it, but I do need to get it to the condition that's going to be later on, because I don't want to find myself caught out later on. Oh, that you know, I've got it looking perfect now, I've got the limbs, you know, these limbs are all working perfectly, then I realise I've got to take off a lot more wood off this limb, simply because of the marks where it's picked up slightly, bits and pieces like that, and I end up with mismatched limbs again when I put it back on the tiller. So although it may seem counterintuitive to take some wood off the limb that's bending, as I say, you're going to have to make the bow at least look somewhere aesthetically pleasing. And again, I'll use the scraper. Okay, I don't know whether you can see that, but at least these limbs now look the same. They've had the same work done to them, so they're at the same state as far as finish goes. As I say, I know we're nowhere near to completing it, but I really wouldn't want to leave that limb looking so different and find myself having to do a lot of work to it later on and ruin any balance, any tiller that I've managed to get correct. So there we are. So let's get it back up onto the tiller and see whether that limb's moving at all now. As usual, you've got to give it a few draws before you can come to any conclusion. Let that work actually bed into the bow. Try and get the camera a bit straighter for you there. Sorry for it being on my head. There we go. Now, I don't know whether you can see, we've got a bit more movement now in that bottom limb. A few more things happening. Okay, I think the best thing to do at that sort of stage is probably brace it up a little bit, and let's have a look at it then. Right, that's at basically full bracing height. Let's see if it's yeah, it's got a bit of a sideways twist in it. Let's get it up on here and see how it looks on the tiller. Okay, it's not sitting very pleasingly on the tiller. Let's try and even this up a bit. Trying to get the string level there. Okay, so you can probably get some information from it there just by looking at it. So that bottom limb is still stiff. There's still too much movement here in this top limb. It's bending a lot more than that bottom limb. So we're probably going to take some more out of that bottom limb, and then we'll go from there. Okay, let's draw that up a little. Let's see if we can work that work into it that we've just done, which will involve a little bit of tillering. Okay, it's looking a bit more even now. I don't know whether you can see the hook is staying a lot more central. If I can try and do that so that you can see it. It's not wandering over quite as much. So we've evened up that large discrepancy, and it also then allows us to see a few more areas, individual areas of the limbs where there are stiff spots or not. We should start to be able to see those now. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check the weight. See whether we're getting near to what was wanted and whether we're actually going to achieve what we want with this bow. It's always nice to know as you go along whether you're going to be anywhere close to actually what you want. Okay, so let's draw that up. So drawing that to, I think we were about 26 there. That's now reading 38 pounds. So it's 38 at 26 at the moment. Okay. Let's check what the measurements are like between the limbs. Okay, it was wanted 38 to 40 at 28. So at the moment it's slightly over that, because obviously we were measuring to 26 there, and we've got it at near enough bracing height. We could actually go up a little bit more there. Okay, let's see if we can see what the measurements are like on this at the moment. Okay, so yeah, it's 6 at the moment, so it really could be 6.5. I'm going to go at 8 inches there from the bottom of the handle. That is about 5 and 7. Up again 8 inches. It's about 6 and 1. So it's actually not far off as far as the discrepancy between the two gaps there is about correct. So let's see if we can get rid of this twist before we go much further. I doubt that's going to come out very well on the camera because I can't really get it central very well, but if I exaggerate it, it's slightly twisted that way. So this right hand side of the bow, again if I exaggerate it, that is where I'm going to need to take some off to try and bring that back round like that. So going from there to there, hopefully. So I'm going to mark down the side there so I get the correct side. Let's mark down there like that, all the way down there, and we'll take some off that side and see what we get. Okay, so we've marked the side there. Let's unbrace that and take some off that corner and see if we can get rid of some of that sideways bend. Right. Okay, so that's taken some off down that side. Let's get the string back on the tiller, give it a few draws, and then see whether that sideways bend has gone anywhere. Let's see whether those few draws there have changed that sideways bend after we've taken some off that corner. Twists or sideways bends in bows can be a complete pain, and we have over the years had bows that have just for some reason been so stubborn and almost impossible to completely get rid of the twist. It really does depend from piece of wood to piece of wood. That's looking an awful lot better actually. See from the other end, another tip is to look from both ends. You'll be surprised how it can change. And also putting it on the floor, again I don't know how well these are coming out on the camera really, but they're all good ways of checking. Just seeing whether that string does actually go down the centre of the stave really, and it's not sort of doing this, going either side as it goes down, or going sitting one side. That's actually not looking too bad. So that's at a state now where I'm a lot happier with it. Another way you can check is by holding it to here and turning it to either side and seeing how quickly the string appears either side of the stave there. And again, it's looking a lot more even. Okay, well I think that's it for today. The camera, quite frankly, is starting to hurt the top of my head. And yeah, look a bit of an idiot in it. So yeah, join us next time, and yeah, hopefully I will have done the finishing off on the tillering on this, and I will also made a start on this one. So yeah, if you want to follow along with these sorts of videos, if you actually want to see what I get up to day to day in pretty much sort of real time when using the camera, it means I can just get on and work and you can see the process. Or maybe you find it completely boring watching hour after hour of me doing this. Well, that is bow making, folks, and that's what you've got to put up with if that's what you want to do yourself. So yeah, again, apologies for having to wear the mask and sounding a little bit like I'm talking to you underwater, but as I say, working with the yew in particular, it is poisonous. The dust is poisonous, the vapour is poisonous, so please be careful. In fact, you should be wearing a mask when you're doing any sort of woodwork, or any work with anything really, quite frankly. If you're working with shell or oil or any sort of substance, you know it makes sense, folks. So yeah, if you want to subscribe, please click the subscribe button, and if you want to check out some of the other videos we've done, I'll stick those up on the screen here. And I'm dying to get this camera off my head because it hurts. You see, I look a complete idiot. I look like some weird doctor who's about to do some sort of experiment on people. Yes, madam. Breathe in while I stick this up your bottom.